Hey gang, I was planning to get this out last week for the Transgender Day of Visibility, but sometimes life gets in the way. Anyway, better late than never. Old friend of the show, Matt Powell, has put up a video regarding his thoughts on transgender people. And considering how he feels about other members of the LGBT community, i.e. they should be murdered, I wonder if he's going to be accepting of the trans community. Hey, don't ruin the surprise. Let's take a look.
Hey guys, this is Matt Powell. So it seems like in America there's been a lot of corruption, and there's been so much corruption around us that even the American healthcare system has been infiltrated by stupidity.
Well, to be fair, as an outsider looking at the American healthcare system, I can agree with that. Your healthcare industry does seem to be infiltrated by stupidity, although our reasons for saying that are somewhat different. While I'm of the opinion that something should be done about the disparity of people receiving quality healthcare determined by increasing costs and dependence on private insurance, you seem to take issue with the fact that the healthcare system seems to want to help people who, through no fault of their own, have a body that doesn't match their brain. So let's get into that.
Just the fact that they're now saying that transgenderism is somehow healthcare, and that we need to have our tax dollars go to supporting somebody mutilating their body, it just goes to show that all men have not faith, and that there are wicked and unreasonable men who have not faith. So the people who don't have faith in Jesus, the Bible says they're wicked and they're unreasonable. You can't really reason with stupidity.
Hold up. A religion that says unbelievers aren't as smart as its members? Wow, who would have guessed it? What would you have expected your holy book to say? Do you think there's a religion out there whose texts say, yeah, you know those people who don't follow our beliefs? They're much smarter than we are. It would be surprising for any group, believers or not, to say that the others are more knowledgeable than its members are, because that would lead to asking, well, why don't we listen to them instead?
The truth is that the Bible says that God made them male and female at the beginning. And even if you did go get your body mutilated and try to become something that you're not, something that you cannot physically be, and something that's against what God has already made you to be, you cannot physically change what your genetics have already determined you to be.
Sure, even with hormones and surgery, a trans person may never become exactly who they perceive themselves to be. But things like hormonal therapy and surgical changes will help them get closer to living their best life. And as long as it doesn't harm anybody else, shouldn't people be allowed, or even encouraged, to live their best lives? My youngest daughter, who was born with a myriad of cardiovascular issues, was never going to be as healthy as the other kids around her. But that didn't mean we shouldn't have tried to get her as healthy as possible. Anyway, he's bringing up genetics. Let's see what noted biologist Matt Powell has to say about this science.
You're either born with male chromosomes or female chromosomes. There is no in between.
There's a ton of in between when it comes to chromosomes in regards to human development. It's not simply that X and Y chromosomes are the only combination of chromosomal pairing. While XX and XY are taught as the woman and man combination, that is a vast simplification of an incredibly intricate topic. And while they are the most common, they're not the only chromosomal groupings possible. And chromosomes are not the only factor in how a human develops. A biological being, as creationists love to point out, is incredibly complex. And the development of an organism as complex as a human is not simply a matter of shove this sperm into an egg and a baby will grow. Embryology is exceptionally multifaceted. As an embryo is gestating in its mother's womb, chemical signals are sent back and forth, directing the growth of the fetus, guiding what cells become what part of the body. So, while the X and Y chromosomes shape the majority of the fetus's development, other factors also feature in developing the body and brain. It's not surprising then that changes in chemical balance affect how a fetus develops, and not solely the chromosomes that it has. I've talked about this more directly in some of my other videos, but for example, changes in a mother's body chemistry after giving birth increase the odds that subsequent male children will be gay. This is believed to be an evolutionary trait, the gay uncle hypothesis, resulting in siblings that are able to care for their nieces and nephews because they won't have children of their own.
People today think this is somehow cool and that it's really awesome to go and get a gender change.
No, going through any kind of transition, chemical, surgical, or otherwise, is not a cool or hip thing to do. Although, occasionally, if hormonal therapy is started early enough, a person's hips can change to match their desired gender. The reason why it's seen as a brave and self-affirming action these days is because they're standing up to, well, people like you who are determined that everyone else should conform to their standards of how humanity should display themselves. Publicly going against generations of, be what your body tells you to be, not what your mind says you are, is quite a big deal. Especially when dealing with bigots like you who demand they suppress all feelings about who they really are.
You cannot change what God has already designed you to be. You cannot change the genetics that God has already placed inside of you when you were conceived.
The problem with your argument, Matt, is that studies have shown that the brain development of transgender people determines how they perceive themselves. So they were, using your words, designed to be trans. Scientific studies have shown that the shape and structure of the brain of transgender people correspond to the brain of cisgender people they identify as. See, Matt, this is science, using studies and research to come to a conclusion, not simply saying, here's a layman's understanding of an incredibly complex field, so everything must conform to my reading of it.
The truth is that there are only male chromosomes and female chromosomes. There is no it chromosomes.
No, the truth is there are chromosomes. In humans, there are generally X and Y chromosomes, and while in the vast majority of cases, an XX chromosomal pairing will result in a cisgendered woman and an XY pair will result in a cisgendered man, they aren't the only determining factor in how a person will develop. As I've mentioned, brain development is influenced by a myriad of different factors. If someone falls outside of the norm and wants to live as a gender their brains tell them they are, there's no reason why they shouldn't.
Just the word it is degrading to another human, but if they're not a male or a female, what are they? They refer to themselves as an it. Yet they'll turn around and say, oh, it's so terrible that you tell your kids that they are sinners and that all have sinned and come short of the glory of God. That's so abusive and wrong. No, you know what's abusive and wrong? Telling your kids that it's okay to go and get their body mutilated by some supposed doctor who should be making them better, not mutilating their bodies. That's what hatred is. That's what abuse is.
Matt, abuse is telling people that they have to conform to a gender they don't see themselves as, and that they must align themselves to a role that others want to push them into. Somebody expressing themselves as the gender they see themselves as does nothing to harm anybody, whereas forcing them into a role that is contrary to who they are is harmful. Studies have shown that transitioning individuals experience more happiness and comfort in themselves once they have a body that matches who they see themselves as than when they're trying to live as someone that they aren't. How is it abuse to help people become who they really are? And frankly, it's rare for people to refer to themselves as it. Yeah, but that's because I work in information technology, the IT team. Generally, but by no means all, transgender people use the pronoun of whatever gender they identify as, and non-binary people will use things like they or them. But of course, there are always exceptions. And if people want to be referred to as it, how does that harm anybody else?
God is not going to bless people like this, and God is not going to support people who support this kind of behavior, this kind of unscientific garbage and propaganda that the news media props up.
How is it unscientific? Scientists, biological, social, and medical, have been studying transgender people and reporting on their findings for a long time now. It's not just that the media is now giving respect towards trans individuals, although that is a good thing. Psychologists and psychiatrists are constantly updating their understanding of humanity, including trans people. And guess what? The majority of their findings show that allowing people to be who they are and supporting them is good for their mental health. Who could have guessed?
So I just wanted to do this quick video about this and just make it known that the Bible says there's only two genders. The Bible says there's male and female. The Bible says that God made them male and female at the beginning.
Look, Matt, if you want to stay the gender you were born as, that's fine. Everybody should live as the gender they want, so I don't think that anybody should be forced to transition if they don't want to. But why do you think that your opinion of what constitutes male and female should be pushed onto others? People living as the gender they see themselves as harms nobody else.
Don't be deceived by what the media tells you or what the radio tells you, YouTube, and people on the internet will tell you.
Yeah, again, I actually agree with Matt on this. Anybody can get a YouTube channel and spout whatever nonsense they want on it. I'm proof of that. Don't accept what I say simply because I'm a handsome and charismatic figure. Just because somebody is good looking and charming doesn't mean their ideas are therefore right. Hopefully, I've made persuasive arguments backed up by research. Matt, if you want to convince people, you need to show them a reason why they should accept your arguments and not just spout your beliefs on YouTube.
Read the Bible, study some science, and it won't be long before you realize there's only male and female, and there's only male chromosomes, female chromosomes. There is no other gender. Just the fact that people think that there is tells you that they are not reasonable people.
Again, science does not show that things just break along straight gender lines like you think they do. Human beings are incredibly complex organisms and are more than just their chromosomes. In the end, I think it would be reasonable to let people just be who they want to be. It doesn't affect you in any way.
Girls will be boys and boys will be girls. It's a mixed up, muddled up, shook up world. It's up my